All right. Welcome everybody to another live Dynamite event. We've got Joey Gilkey on the line today, and I'm super excited about this guy. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a firebrand. He's the man, the myth, the legend of Apex revenue. Man, Joey, I'm so stoked to have you on today because you are someone who's not just like coming out with the heat on like giving the great content on outbound motions, but you're also a bit of a controversial subject, right? Like you take some really hard stances on some stuff. And so like,
Right.
I love it. And at the end of the day, we all don't have to agree. At the end of the
That's right.
day, like
That's
Joey's
right.
coming in here and saying like, hey, look, like, this is my brand. This is who I am. This is what it's about. And so, but at the end of the day, your revenue, your numbers, your outbound, your sales team development, they all speak for itself. So I'm excited to have you on because,
Thanks, man.
as you know, recruiters are just in need of sales skills right now.
I get it.
We need you. We need you right now. So,
I get it, brother.
but before we get into it, I want to just give a shout out to our sponsor, Sendoso. Sendoso is the #1 platform for sending gifts to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Joey, I sent you a gift. I just sent you a gift for this presentation. What'd you think about the whole Sendoso experience? Like just getting it at this point.
Seamless, dude. It's actually, it's pretty simple. It's like, hey, there's a gift waiting for you. Put your address in, and that's it. So
Yeah, and
address in, click a button.
And I didn't have to be some creepy guy asking for your address that you didn't know. So that was kind of nice.
No, it's like, hey, man, I want to send you something. Click a button, put your address in, it'll send it, and then it'll show up at my door. So
it's so cool.
Super cool.
Yeah, I actually did. I was just telling you about this, that I did a quick research on you using the Sendoso platform. They have this really cool feature where you can actually like put your the person you're sending it to, their contact information, or I should say their URLs or LinkedIn socials or whatever, and it'll give a suggestion. And it was like spot on, straight outdoorsy stuff. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. So
that is dope.
Made it really easy.
But yeah, what's funny is I used to do a lot of gifting in my my past. Probably about a decade ago, I was selling super high-end risk management consulting and commercial insurance to high-risk manufacturers, and I would do a manual research to do gifting. It took forever. So if it does what it says you just said it did, that's pretty damn impressive. Saves me time.
It will save you a shit ton of time, man. And so yeah, Joey, let's get into it. I think you've got a really, really hot session today. I just watched your first podcast launch. I'm super excited to chat with you because of it. There's some really good stuff in there. And
cool.
If you guys don't know who Joey is, I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself.
Cool,
man. Let us know who you are, man.
Yeah, dude. I'm a first and foremost a husband, father of 2 little boys. I am a 70-acre ranch owner. So I'm a weirdo, and I decided to go live with no neighbors, basically, or at least my other neighbors own big ranches too. I live in East Tennessee. I'm a cigar aficionado, if you will. So all that's by night, but by day, I'm a CEO of Apex Revenue, pseudo CEO of Phone Ready Leads because we acquired them and they're a subsidiary of Apex Revenue. But I'm all things outbound, baby. That's my thing. Go to strangers, convince them to have a conversation with us at some point. Nurture those strangers into friends who want to pay us a lot of money. That's my thing.
I love it. That sums it up quite nicely. That's what we're all about here at Live Dynamite events too, and with recruiting at Dynamite. It's just like I feel like people just kind of make outbound to be like this super complex thing, and it doesn't have to be. Like it could be very simple. Bro, just as exactly what you just said, right?
They overthink sales in general. Sales. I created a definition years ago that removes the barrier of sales. The used car sales, whatever, right? At the end of the day, sales is a transaction based on trust between 2 parties, 2 individuals, 2 companies, whatever it might be. So all it is a process of building trust that solves a problem. I trust that if you pay me, or I trust that if I do what I'm supposed to do, that I get paid, and you trust that if you pay me, you get what I'd say I'm going to give you. And so build your process around how do I maximize trust? Like send a gift if you have to. Like that's outbound. That's sales. And so it really eliminates the fear behind it. At some point, every friend in your Rolodex, anyone you can call on right now that you call a close friend, any client you currently have was probably once upon a time a stranger. And
That's right.
All sales is turning strangers into people who know you, like you, trust you, transact with you.
That's it. I mean, like some of the best deals I've ever done was with friends. But it's funny because they were developed, right? Like you just said,
Hmm.
like at the end of the day, I feel like everything's kind of a sale, even like in your relationship, right? It's like
Oh,
not to be
yes.
transactional, but like it's just, hey, that's the process. You're building relationships, you're trying to, exchange value to each other, and like that's it. That's it. That's really it.
Marriage
So
is a transaction between two people
1000%.
based on trust.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
exactly it. That's exactly it, man. And it's so funny. I was on Instagram the other day, just kind of going on a segue here, and there's this guy who's like, this sales leader. He's like, if you don't have friends, you can call at 3 a.m. That's like ready to go. It's got their Glock. I'm like, yo, come on, man. Nobody's trying to like catch a charge with your friends right now. Like, if your friend's calling you at 3 a.m. trying to bury a body, that's a problem.
bro, I played football in college. I did have some people who did catch some charges together as ride or die. So those aren't the friends I cared. I mean, listen, I have some friends who will bury some bodies on my farm with me if I call them. But thankfully, I've got no bodies to bury right now, except for the coyotes that keep tormenting my livestock.
There you go. There you go, man. I need to get out to the farm, man. I want to check this out. I'm all about that farm living
Anybody,
myself.
anybody is welcome to Knoxville, so long as you're not a weirdo.
As long as you're not a weirdo. So let's get into it. Joey, you have been on a sales journey that I'm pretty impressed by, right? You
Thanks.
are now the CEO of Apex. You've built, billions of dollars in sales. You have enabled sales teams all around the world. At the end of the day, recruiting is a sales process, especially agency recruiting. That's mainly our audience here is freelance agency recruiters. We have some agency owners in here as well. Um, Tell us a little bit about the way you currently think and how you got to this whole sales journey part of what you do at Apex.
Yeah, I was fortunate. So my career in sales has been started off in corporate, like a lot of folks, cubicle farm. Actually, started off a couple of years before that. I actually went into full time ministry. So I was in full time campus ministry. I was raising support and funds for the ministry for the nonprofit. And so I got to learn how to get into investors, people who are interested in the cause, pitch them, follow up, nurture, account manage. All the things that go into sales is very transferable in nonprofits. Why people who come from the nonprofit church world are typically fairly good at sales because they're used to that type of climate. But the cool thing is I'm brushing shoulders with really successful men and women, and inevitably any young kid who has a ton of perceived talent inevitably get offered jobs left and right. Hey, if this ever doesn't, if you ever want to, leave the nonprofit world and enter into the for-profit world, like come work for me, or like I got people you can go, whatever. And so that happened to me a number of times, and there was one that came across my desk that was like, I didn't tend to at first, but after a little bit, I was like, you know what, I feel called to leave this and start my journey in the business world. And so I ended up taking a role at actually recruiting of all places, tech systems
Oh,
for many people who are aware of tech systems. Got kind of shot a little bit above the typical entry point there. And then I got to climb and see some success there, get some leadership roles, manage some budgets, got my ass whooped a couple times, but learned through that. And then that led me into more of a sales leadership role, building out an entire sales department for a risk management, consulting, and commercial insurance firm, and built that from 1.5 million to 9.5 million in 1 year, 18 months. And so I kind of learned there. That's actually where I learned account-based selling, right? Because our average transaction was 750 grand. Our commission checks were 60K on those deals. And so, we could take a more spear hunting as opposed to net fishing
that's it.
approach. And so I learned account research. I learned nurturing. I learned the art of going to the C-suite, top down, middle out, bottom up type of approach. From there, got poached to be the VP of sales of a marketing agency at the time of when HubSpot was really starting to come on the scene with inbound. And so kind of rode that HubSpot channel partner, one of the early channel partners, wave. Saw a ton of success there. Had some falling outs with an owner, if you will. Some unmet promises. And so I was like, you know what? I've made a lot of people a lot of money at this point in my career. I'm young. Like, I can take the risk. I don't have kids. My wife's super supportive. Like, I've made some money. I can invest it in whatever I build. And so I went and built my first company, which is a company called Tribe, which was an outsourced sales development firm. We moved more into outsourced account-based sales. So it was, You have large tickets, let us go spear hunt for you. Ended up selling that to an account-based marketing platform at the end of 19, early 20. That did not go well. So those who always put the glitz and glam on having multi-million-dollar exits, they don't always go. It's not as easy as sell your company, get a big fat check, and ride off into the sunset and buy a farm. I did buy a farm, but that money didn't last very long. And so I went on to build what is now Apex Revenue after that. I've had a bunch of other side endeavors. I've had some micro exits, made a couple million in that, but as a whole, that's been my predominant course. So that's how I got to this place. But in that time, I have been privy to probably more data on outbound sales than most humans will experience in lifetime, which allows me to see trends, see problems in the market, see solutions, feel pain, understand shifts in the market, understand where things are going. And that has what has kind of informed our methodology, which is, I would say, a slightly unique, but being adopted across the market currently type of methodology. So
I love it, man. And so you came, the thing that got me onto Joey was your brand on LinkedIn. You were unapologetic yourself. Again, we don't agree on a lot of things. Like, that's completely besides the point. But at the end of the point,
totally.
the end of the day, though, we actually agree quite a bit on a lot of things as well. Like, we agree on how to go about this sales engagement game. And
Yeah.
something you came out with was the 6 stages of outbound, and how people right now are just so focused on automation, AI, and trying to just get everybody else to do the thing that they need to just get done before they actually do those things, right?
That's right.
And
That's right.
it's like, in recruiting, we have so much noise right now, so much noise on AI coming in and like this new automation. And now, like, recruiting is finally getting onto like things like
That's right.
email automation and like Apollo. And it's already too late, right? It's already too late. But can you explain that a little bit to the audience? Because I
Yeah.
think that's a good foundational piece to what we're going to go into today in your lesson.
Yeah. What's interesting is there's been iterative. So there's 3 different frameworks, all of which have different numbers, right? My initial framework had the 3 pieces to getting it right. The one you're mentioning has 6. There's an evolution of that that's really 4, but they're all still true, right? It's just there's more elaborate aspects to it. So the 6 that we talk about to get outbound right is, and I'll explain. I'll say it, then I'll explain each one. So message, market fit, strategy, process. That's like phase 1. Phase 2 is people, leadership, management, technology. And you have to get it right in that order. So starting with message, market fit, too many people go to market and they don't truly understand what message, market fit actually means, right? We understand product market fit, right? And I think that we can all understand, like, if you don't have the right product for the market, or you have a good product but for the wrong market, there's not going to be a fit there, and therefore there will not be a demand. But assuming you have product market fit, the next level, especially for outbound success, is message market fit. How is it that we actually communicate about the product or service that will resonate specifically with the market to where there is a fit, right? Like, our message, just like product and market fit together, the message and the market have to fit together. So you have to get that right first. The second is strategy. How is it that we are going to take that message of our product to the market and get it in front of our buyers, right? The different personas within the different accounts, within the different verticals and industries we sell into. The third is process. How do we then systematize and almost productize doing that at scale, right? My whole thing is fundamentals at scale, consistently over time. And process is the linchpin to all of that. You have to get process dialed in. We always talk about, like, I would rather have a rock star process over a rock star salesperson. Right, salespeople come and go. They're fairly transient, as you know. There's churn, there's retention issues. People, move to different roles for whatever reason, but the process can remain the same at all times. And so if that process remains the same, I can slot people into it, teach them the process that implements the strategy, that deploys the message to the people I want to sell to. Then you finally get to people. So people tend to skip phase 1. They don't do good message market fit. They don't have good strategy, and they've not processitized.
Yeah.
Systematically how to do that at scale. They just tend to throw people, technology, and expensive executive salaries at a problem, hoping that solves for outbound. Once you have all that dialed, then it's people. Great. Well, who are the people who will then run the process that deploys the strategy and gets the message in front of our buyers? What's the process for hiring them, training them, leading those people, ramping them quicker, et cetera? Once you have people in place, the next level is making sure that those people are well led, managed, and trained. Having process systems and elements to leadership that enables those sales reps to be accountable to, not just accountable to from a management perspective, but I mentioned lead, manage, and train specifically because we tend to use those interchangeably when they are very distinctly different skill sets, right? A good sales leader can lead, right? That is, think of captain of the ship. They've got their, the telescope out, they've got the map, they're looking at where they want to go. They get people motivated to the cause, to the North Star. Management is the KPI management. How do I keep my team accountable to the KPIs, the metrics that actually lead to us hitting that North Star? And the last is coaching and training. So think of that as on that same ship where the captain is directing, the manager is making sure that everyone's rowing in sync. The coach or the trainer element of a leader is sitting down next to each rower on the boat saying, hey, what if your technique was this? What if you preserved your energy with this movement instead? Hey, how are you doing? You feeling all right? You need water, whatever it might be. Yep. That's the analogy I like to use. You have to have all three qualities and be good at all of them and ideally great at some of them. And then the last is, okay, we've got message, we've got strategy, we've got process, we've got people, I've got a leader. How do we then scale this out a little bit more and make it more efficient and effective by implementing technology? And I say efficiency and effectiveness intentionally.
Yep.
I do not ever want to sacrifice the effectiveness of my approach for efficiency. Simultaneously, I don't want to sacrifice efficiency for just effectiveness, right? That works, but if you want to scale, it doesn't.
Nope.
So that's my 6-layer framework. Realistically, you break it down. Outbound requires 4 things: list, message, rep, professional follow-up. That's it.
That's it. And it's so, I think you hit on something that's like really, really important for people to really get to, especially in the recruiting space. Like this efficiency and effectiveness. I loved what you said there, right? Like, it's like if you're coming in with a new technology and you're just looking for, hey, I need to get 1,000 more outbound messages out or whatever it is. And then at the end of the day, like those messages are hitting a wall and you're not getting an effective result from it. Like there's always going to be a little bit of sacrifice when you go for efficiency towards effectiveness. But at the end of the day, you can't, like, you have to have a margin of error that's very, very small. And right. My result is, hey, don't automate anything that has a high impact on that effectiveness. If it's really required that you have a really solid like return rate from it, if there's something that's going to ruin your brand or create some sort of error in your system, then don't automate it. Like it's just like it doesn't make sense. And some people are, if you're 1,000 person, spam to the wall kind of person, that's just not going to work anymore. I just don't think it's going to actually function in today's business environment. And, and that's a big problem. That's kind of why, like, I've never done cold calling. So I haven't done cold calling in like 7 years. I do warm calling, right? So warm calling is all about, like you said, creating the nurture program and then cold calling into people who know, like, and trust you and then have that intent to like want to work with you. So, before we get into that, like, I think one of the things you had mentioned is on the KPI piece, like really understanding what metrics are going to actually move the needle forward. And as recruiters, when we go to market, a lot of times we're really focused on meetings, and you have like really ruffled some feathers on this one. So like, tell me a little bit about why meetings don't matter, my man.
Yeah. Let me make one point to automation, then I want to jump into that because I think it's important to understand this. There's 2 parts to automation I want to talk about. First is with automation, especially accessible automation, meaning a lot of people know how to use it, comes saturation. With saturation comes commoditization.
Yes.
So you are commoditizing yourself the more automation you use. Now, my rule of thumb on automation is there's back of house automation and there's front of house. Back of house are things and processes and elements that we can automate that are behind the scenes operationally in my company that make me more efficient, right? and ideally more effective. Example, Sendoso, you said they can automate the research of what might be interested to me. Okay.
Yes.
But what you don't want to do is front of house automation, or at least ideally not. So front of house automation is anything that touches the client, the prospect, the audience, the market that, like you said, could hurt the brand, could have too much margin for error, et cetera, because we only get so many at bats. And so we do not want to be a commodity. We want to be looked at as valuable. We want to be able to charge what we're worth, and ideally even more than that. And when you automate, you instantly lose value in that transaction. Again, sales is just a transaction between two people based on trust. And so if you are eroding at that trust because of automation, then you are going to erode your value, and therefore lessen the likelihood of your transaction actually happening. So that's my first thing on automation. To the meetings question you asked, yeah, so I ruffle feathers because we use a phrase that says meetings don't matter. Now, we use that phrase because it pisses people off and it gets attention. And obviously, you know of me because my posts go viral because I like to ruffle feathers.
I fucking love it, man. I'm not going to lie. I
right?
love it. It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
The real phrase that we tend to use once you get to know us is not that meetings don't matter. It's that meetings aren't everything, but they're not nothing, right? So, or better said, they're not nothing, but they're also not everything. I think far too often we put this pressure on meetings that say that, and we do this in our organization from a business model perspective. We hire and fire based on how many meetings. We bonus people based off of meetings. We set quotas around meetings, right? And so we tend to operate our sales operation or our sales effectiveness. It all revolves around this one metric that is not meant to be the North Star metric. The North Star metric should be revenue. And so if we are optimizing around a metric that can actually hurt our downstream revenue chances, it is not the metric we need to be optimizing for.
Yes.
Again, it's not nothing, but not everything. And so we need to, and we fundamentally have to change. And I think this is starting to happen, at least the amount of people that regurgitate my content now. I think it's happening. We need to stop optimizing around this meeting metric. Again, a transaction is going to have to happen with a meeting. Yes, if we sell anything that's not completely transactional, a widget or a commodity, you can't just send them to a landing page. They opt into a free trial and get upsold into. That's product-led growth, right? That works. But when it comes to meetings, when we optimize around this thing, we are only optimizing around a very small percentage of our market. So if you guys have ever read The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes, RIP
Yep.
Chet, Chet's the OG gangster in the space who, he talks about this buying pyramid or this buying market, right? There's 3% of the market that's buying currently actively.
Yep.
7% that's open to it, 30% that we call not thinking about it, 30% that's a no, not now, but it probably will be one day. And then there's probably 30% that'll never buy no matter what you do, no matter how problem, solution, or product aware they become. When we optimize around meetings, we're essentially saying go find that 3%, maybe start bleeding into that 7% that's buying or open to it. The challenge is similar to automation. Everyone is fighting for that 3%, which means that you are going to compete on price. You're going to wage war against all your competitors, which means you're also going to see a higher no-show rate to your meetings. So if you book 10 meetings, but only 6 show up, really you only book 6 meetings. And so you're going to have more people not show up. You're going to get ghosted more during the downstream sales process you have. And so we can't get stuck there. So what do? We have to optimize for the rest of the market, right? We like to say there's 67% of the market you're really not touching. I don't really care about the 30% that'll never buy, but I want to know who they are so I can stop going after them.
Stop right after them. Exactly. That's
and so,
it right there. That's like that part right there. Stop going after the 30% that's never going to buy.
That's right.
You're just never going to get them. Like, it's just not going to happen. And at the end of the day, like, I love the fact that you're even talking about that 67%, because that's one of the big parts of what we talk about in recruiting is like the 3% of the market that's ready to buy are the people who have the job boards up or job posting up. It's like they're ready to purchase because they are looking for somebody. And guess who is going after that 3% all the time?
Everyone. And nowadays with accessibility and automation, Apollo, ZoomInfo, et cetera, everyone's got access to who's hiring right now. And so everyone's creating campaigns. And so everyone's inbox who are putting job posts out are filtering out your emails, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so what that means is you've got to have a process for identifying the other 67%. Again, that is the 7% that's open to it, the 30% that's not thinking about it, the 30% that's not now. Well, when you are making your calls or you are sending your emails or you're doing your door knocking, cold calling, you have to understand what those segments are, and you have to be bucketing people into those segments to know where they're currently at, right? And so if someone is not now, what tends to happen is they just get recycled into our lists for 90 days from now, 120 days from now, et cetera. No, like there is a process and a strategy for following up with those folks. It needs to be regular because they're not now today, may not be not now in 21 days, 3 weeks time. And so we have
That's
to
it.
continuously be nurturing those folks. The not thinking about it, this is a really interesting crowd. These are the people who are either not product aware, right? Meaning they don't know about you. They are not solution aware, or they're not problem aware. They don't know they have the problem yet. They don't know they have a recruiting issue or a talent issue yet.
Yep.
Or maybe they know that they have a talent issue, but they're not solution aware. They're not aware that there's good recruiters out there that can fill their funnel with high quality talent, et cetera. Or they do know there's a problem. They do know there's recruiting agencies. They're tired of it, but they don't know of your specific product or solution that is unique value proposition, unique position in the market that can actually help them. And so your entire goal and objective for that not thinking about it market is to create intrigue,
That's it.
right? Not a meeting. If you force a meeting on those people, you're going to get higher no shows because they're just not thinking about it right now. It may be not a very big priority. Your job is to make it a priority. Create the intrigue. Have content that you can syndicate to them when you get them on the phone. If you find out, yeah, I'm really thinking about that, but that's interesting. Well, shit, you should probably build a process and a framework around how you follow up with those folks. Keep giving them content. Hey, John, thought of you. Enjoyed our conversation a couple of weeks ago. We actually just rolled out this blog that helps you think through talent acquisition, or we just did a survey on here's what OTE compensation is for that particular role that you're having a problem with. Let me give you that. Hopefully that's helpful. Boom, send it to them. A week later, say, hey, John, did you check out that thing I sent you? Great. Also, by the way, I've got another one. And you keep nurturing those people until they're intrigued enough to then say, okay, shoot, whatever you got, let's go ahead and meet, right? Meetings aren't nothing, but they're not everything. And so be willing to take a delayed meeting on a more nurtured person you've started to build trust with. That's the approach.
That is fantastic, and it's like, but in order for you to really do that, guys, like and you hear me talk about this all the time. Know your customer, right? You have to know your client so well that you beyond like where they might even know. They might, like you said, like they might not even be aware that there's a problem. They might not even be aware that there's like an issue right now where, like for example, that accountants, for example, are some of the highest in demand roles right now on the market because there's just not enough people entering the space. So like if you go to a company and you're like, hey, you may not know this, but your accounting team is getting hit up by recruiters every single day. And in order for you to keep and retain them, you need to have some certain things in place. This is what's important to accountants today, right? So if you can provide value outside of just like, hey, I got a candidate for you, or hey, like it's more of here's how you retain some people.
That's right.
It sounds counterintuitive to be like, here's how you retain people. So like, use me. But it's better because it actually shows that you are very knowledgeable in your space. It's you're solving a problem that they actually will have or are going to have that they may not be aware of. There's certain things that you can actually do to continue to create that and foster that relationship so that when it's time, you're the person, you're the guy or the girl. And so it's like, that's the most important part of this sales process. And it helps you redefine what a lead is, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned something about like, before I get into that, like you have to redefine a lead because a lead isn't always a hot lead ready to take a meeting. A lead is anybody that you've had a meaningful interaction with that is a customer or potential customer that you could actually convert at some point in time. Like
we call those activated.
Activated, right? So activated lead. So actually this goes right into kind of your lesson too. So let's kind of go into that actually, because
perfect.
it's you talk about the 4 levels of completion and the 4 eyes. And so let's help me understand what that or help our audience understand what that means and how that's put into play into a modern sales process today.
Cool. Let's talk completion first. So completion, there are 4 levels. So completion is defined as I got the person I intended at the account that I want to break into all the way through our messaging, right? Could be a cold pitch, could be a cold email, etc. and bucketed or segmented into where they're at in the market. So a pretty easy 4 buckets you could put them in is not interested, right? It's more helpful to understand are they not interested because they're a never or are not interested because they're a not now. There is the next one, which is referred, which means, oh, the person I thought was my contact at this account, I've actually been told it's Sally over in procurement or whatever it might be. Okay, well now I that's valuable information for me to create a follow up with Sally, right? I've got some info. Hey, I talked to John, Sally. He said that you're the person I should talk to. So that's referred. And the next 2 is booked, right? So people you can put on the calendar. That's pretty obvious. They hit the calendar. And the last one, and this is where the 4 eyes come in, is activated. So what we find is you can tend to activate 15 to 30% of all completions. So again, person you attended, account you want to break into, all the way through a cold message or a message, and bucket it into 1 of 4 categories. 20% of those should turn into, on average, activated. Now, what is activated? That's the 4 eyes. So this is a framework that we created years ago. Activated lead is defined as the 4 eyes: information, intrigue, interest, or intent. So information is what is the valuable information that I got from our conversation or our interaction that I can leverage now in a future sales conversation. That's an activation. Intrigue is kind of that not now category. Like, what is something that I piqued the interest of this person that I can leverage in a future outreach sales conversation? Interest is, yeah, send me something. I'm actually interested in this. Yes, never thought about that way. That's really interesting. Could you follow up with me in 2 weeks? Hey, whatever it might be, right? Or booked meeting can kind of fall into that interest category as well. Realistically, booked meetings is a subcategory of the interest of the activations. And the last is intent. Yes, we are actually currently on contract with XYZ recruiting agency. Our contract ends in Q2. We've not been super thrilled with them. We're already actively looking for some folks, right? That would be intent. And so if you can identify what of the 4 eyes they are, then you can then deploy a future strategy, future outreach, and follow up based upon which activation they are. That's the 4 eyes.
I love it. And so it's what to conclude this and kind of package it into a recruiting perspective as well, especially what we teach at Recruiting with Dynamite, a big focus on it is it's not just about trying to book a meeting right away. It's not just about closing a bunch of deals, or it is, obviously you want to do that, but it's not about closing a bunch of deals this week with new clients, because the reality is when people don't know you, they don't like you, they don't trust you, they're less likely to do a deal with you. And if they are going to do a deal with you with those 3 things not in play, the likelihood of you actually having a successful client is really low. And there's some really great data that I always tout. It's like 20% of most companies' revenue comes from straight cold, like outbound engagement. 80% of it actually comes from warmed up, actual
channel
build-up,
referrals, inbound
referrals, exactly. And so when you have a good system that's built around that, it actually makes your job a lot easier, because you're not so focused on just bringing a bunch of people into the system. Yes, you want to do that, but your outbound becomes more of a marketing function, which you've talked about too, is like it becomes less about trying to make a sale and more about trying to nurture a lead and create a relationship. And with what you're saying, and this is something I'm going to start implementing myself, because when you said it, I was like, that's fucking genius. Like, why did I not think about it that way? And those 4 eyes is a great way to kind of position and segment some of your customers and your clients. So like, that's fantastic data for you when you go out to market, and you can actually go build lists, and now your list becomes your strategy, which I know is another thing that you talk about. So like that's phenomenal.
Well, it just makes it easier, like there's cold outreach, there's warm outreach. And I think that, and both of those still fall underneath outbound. Like warm, as to your point, warm is still outbound. It's still technically cold, call it lukewarm. But it's far more focused. If I go to the market and I segment it out, I now have buckets of leads that are now micro lists of my much larger list that is far more contextual. So I understand this person's information, this person's intrigue, this person's interest, this person's intent. I can then leverage that. Again, that's why I always explain it like information is valuable information that you can leverage in a sales conversation.
Yep.
Intrigue is I pique the interest that I can leverage in my, so that whole thing is about creating micro lists that you can then leverage with context your future outreach to them.
I love that. And so the question that I get a lot, and I have my theory on it, but I want to know yours. Obviously, that's why you're here. Is how do you even start those conversations then? So, how do you get a higher response to pull in better leads that will basically raise their hand and ultimately put through your 4 levels of completion? Where do you even
Mm-hmm.
start?
Yeah, so I mean, let's take cold call for example, then we can move into cold email. I
Yep.
have a very different approach, not a different approach, but it's one that people talk about but no one implements. But when it comes to cold call, the entire framework is to connect, right? So get the person you intended on the phone, to then have a script framework you can work people through that gets them talking, to then understand where you're going to bucket them from there, right? And so I'll give you a script that we use. So we'll call in and we'll say, "Hey, is this Will?" Yeah, hey Will. Hey Will, this is Joey Gilkey with Apex Revenue. This is actually the first time I've reached you. You were not expecting my call. Could you help me out for a brief second? Inevitably, they say, yeah, sure. About 60 to 70% should say that. Um, yeah, sure. What you got? Well, the reason for me, the purpose for me reaching out is I wanted to introduce or find out the best way to introduce Apex Revenues to ABC Company. Um, I don't know if you take meetings, but is your calendar available for a meeting? And now the reason we ask that is because no one in their right mind is going to say yes to that question because they have no idea why we're exactly calling it.
Yep.
And like, I mean, tell me more. But I'm not just going to take a meeting with anybody.
Yep.
Perfect.
No.
Well, I appreciate you asking. Well, the reason for my call is to talk about outbound sales effectiveness at ABC Company. We have a proprietary blah, 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 pitch, pitch, pitch. Let me ask you, and then you lead into a question. So every time that you have a portion of your pitch, finish it with a question, right? Because it's not just like, give me your pitch, wait for them to respond to it. It's hear the pitch, hopefully something strikes some interest there, ask a question and get them talking. As they start talking, have a few follow-up questions, pull through questions that can continue the conversation, and then you can make a discerning or create a decision-making framework around, okay, where do I take this? Do I take it straight to a meeting because it's like hot? Is it warm enough to where I can gather some more information or whatever it might be? And then be willing to get off the phone when it's time to get off the phone once you've segmented them. If they're not ready for a meeting, if it doesn't make sense, don't get there, right? But just get what you need, segment it, get off. That's an easy framework to implement. And so that's cold calling. And then I have a systems to how you segment those and make those micro lists, if you will.
Yeah.
Cold emailing, I take a little bit of a different approach. So a lot of people still have the call to action of, could you stomach 15 minutes? Hey, would you open to a 15-minute Zoom? Hey, 10 minutes of this. What? Right? You're
Yeah.
going in for a transaction with no trust. It's a micro
Yep.
transaction. We're not asking for the sale, but we're asking for a different type of transaction. What I like to do is seed that with a super valuable piece of content. Hey, Will, cut to the chase. We're an outbound sales effectiveness firm. We work with HP, Dell, blah, blah, blah. We have millions of data points on the state of outbound sales in the marketplace. Don't have a really strong ask for you here, but I put together a 7-minute video on the state of outbound and how you can fix it and how you can be ahead of this one big change we're seeing in the marketplace. If they opt into that, that's an activation, right? Now, do they watch it? Do they engage with it? Whatever, it doesn't really matter. But now I know that they're at least in a segment that's not completely never, right?
Yep.
And then from there, you pick up the phone, you do follow up appropriately, and you try to get deeper into that account with more understanding. That's how you can start segmenting out completions into activations. Like that's the gold. Be willing to
Yep.
defer that transaction of meeting for information and intel on that account.
Yeah, you're pulling data at the end of the day. And I love the VSL kind of side of it, like the
Mm-hmm.
video sales letter side. It's like you're creating kind of an authority amplifier. This is something that we're starting to coach on in our programs is like, don't just like come out. First and foremost, do not send AI intro videos. Nobody is going to watch it. It is the most annoying thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like, do you remember when I was talking about this earlier with another guest? Is like, do you remember when you got the handwritten notes
Oh
from
yeah.
people? And it
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, I've got this handwritten note and it's just printed. It's like,
Yep.
come on, man. Like, do not do that.
That
It's
doesn't
the
work.
same. It doesn't work. It might have worked for like a second, but anybody who's privy, who's a high value client, who's somebody that you actually want to do business with in the recruiting game, especially, like, they're getting hit up by thousands of people. And exactly what you said, the more that it's available to everyone, and it is available to everyone, the more people use it, the more you look and sound and feel the
Yeah.
exact same way as everybody else. Exactly what content's going to eventually be on LinkedIn right now. I think, like, right now there's this big wave of content, and I'm looking at the next thing that's like, okay, we've done the content thing, so now it's what's next. So just be ahead of it, but at the same time, like, do not send that stuff. But a VSL is completely different. You're opting in. You're having someone say, hey, look, like, jump in. If this sounds interesting to you, do you want to take? I could send over, a quick video of explaining what this is about. It's 20 seconds, nothing crazy, and let me know if this is interesting to you. That
100%.
is a great way to create better authority in the
And
space.
then follow up on it. That's where
And
people, I
follow up
mean,
on
the
it.
statistic right now is 80% of deals require 5 or more follow-ups on the lead, right? A lead and opt-in, right? 71% of reps, or excuse me, yeah, 71% of reps are making 1 or fewer follow-ups on a lead. So
Wow.
not to mention the 2 follow-ups, 3 follow-ups, and 4 follow-ups, which is still less than 5 requirement for
Yep.
80% of deals. What's the percentage of the market of sales reps who are not doing proper follow-up? That's why I say it's list, message, rep, professional follow-up. You can do the first 3 really well, but not see the downstream revenue impact if professional follow-up doesn't exist. And so develop a process to get the interest, to get the segment, but then develop an even more aggressive process on forcing professional follow-up.
That's it. That's it. So let's wrap this all up and make sure that everybody has a clear understanding of this. At the end of the day, you can't skip to automation. You can't
Mm-hmm.
skip to AI. You need to have a process. You need to have those things lined up. And specifically, I love that you start with message market fit, because we talk about product market fit. That's like, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people do not understand, like, product market fit. Your product is your candidate. Most of the
Yes.
time, if you're just doing contingency recruiting, contingency, standard retained, all that stuff, it's your product is your candidate. If you cannot deliver candidates, you do not have a product.
Yes.
But the new way that we're looking at recruiting, and what we're seeing right now, is more of a service, like you said it earlier, solutionized, serviceized, productized business that, like, can actually solve problems and not necessarily look at just the scope of a specific person or role. So
Yes.
when you do that and you solve for problems, not necessarily recruiting problems, it doesn't always have to be. If you look at, like, Cole Gordon, he doesn't solve for recruiting problems, he solves a sales problem, right?
Yes.
And you solve a sales problem, you help develop sales teams, right? At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a sales problem, not a recruiting problem. You can actually create better product market fit on your
100%.
solution, and you can actually create really great deals. And I actually saw this in play with some of my past clients, or past employment. Shout out to Console Partners for this, because I didn't even realize it when I was working there, but they created this kind of solutionized, productized business. And they had
Yep.
this deal with, like, a major phone carrier in the US. Like, it was like a $2 million committed spend. And I didn't even realize that was even possible. Right.
Yes.
And it was awesome to see that happen, and it allowed them to create really great cash flow. And that's what we sell. Like, that's what we're teaching people now to do. We
Yep.
did this in A Talent. It's really cool. But at the end of the day, understand your outbound, understand your messaging market fit, and then you can go down the line to automation. Do not go down to automation
100%.
first. Second, make sure that you have the 4 levels of completion down, so that way when you're reaching out to a lead, or a prospect, you can convert them into a lead, right? And sometimes for us, like, it doesn't have to be, hey, like, come look at my business and look at what we're doing. It can
Mm-hmm.
be, hey, I liked what you guys did over here. This is really cool. This could be helpful for you. Now that I've seen this observation I made on your company, like, just take a look at it. Hopefully it's something that you can use. No ask. There's
0.
zero ask in that. You're not asking for a transaction. You're not asking for time. You're not asking for anything. And you can create leads. One of my clients actually was able to build a 56 leads just doing that in less than 30 days. And now, like, starting off the year, he's set up with like 5 different appointments coming into the new year. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
conversion cycle on that is a completely different thing, and that goes into your intent data, your four eyes. And so, understand the four eyes and start labeling really, really well who has engaged through your completion, where they're at, and then you can leverage that information to use that and follow up. Is that a good synopsis of
It's a
what we
great
discussed
synopsis.
today?
It's a great synopsis. Can I give some bonuses?
Yeah,
Be
please.
helpful? Like, because I listen, if nothing turns into revenue, it doesn't matter. And so there's some
Yes.
things that we've introduced into the sales process, right? Taking it from lead to closed, right? I'm all about taking it from cold to closed. There's elements you can introduce to your business that are incredibly valuable to the sales process that make your downstream conversion metrics skyrocket. So a couple things, I'll throw them out there kind of shotgun style or fast, but first one, to your point, content, like you can use cold calling for content syndication just as well. We're testing it right now. We're about to run a big blitz next week on this. We've got an incredible presentation that we tend to do in our discovery call. It's like 60 slides. We can get through it in about 15 to 17 minutes. It helps them talk to the change in the marketplace, the pain that comes from that, what people are trying that won't work, what you should do that will work, and how we actually do that for you. It's a presentation that works. And what we're doing is when we cold call, instead of just doing completion, trying to activate the lead, we're trying to activate it differently now. Instead of asking, basically, it's like, hey, would you be open to signing up for a webinar on the state of outbound? What's wrong with it? What people are trying to do that won't work and what will? Can I go ahead and sign you up for that? And you're like, our activated lead rate goes from 20 to 34%, right? Now, those people have opted in. They've given you email address, put them into drip marketing, but then also be following up with them. That's the first thing. Second thing, be willing to introduce what we call a foot in the door offer. People are probably familiar with some terminology: tripwire offer, stepstone offer, foot in the door,
Lead
right?
magnet. Yeah.
What is the thing that you can get them to pay for before they pay for the big thing, right? And so as a recruiter, what are the different elements you talk about and you know more than anyone else in the market about HR and hiring and talent? Maybe it's, hey, what is your workforce currently costing you? Build out a calculator, whatever. Hey, we can do an audit on your where you guys are leaking profit in your whatever, and you could charge 1,000, 3,500. We charge 15,000 for our foot in the door offer because our much larger offers $250,000 plus. People aren't as likely to jump into a $250,000 deal, but our metrics for converting to the $15,000 thing is twice as much. But the benefit is we're going to sell people into a $15,000 thing, and we're going to have a 70% conversion from the $15,000 thing to the $250,000 thing, which if you do the math, if I just sell straight into my $250,000 thing, I might close 10%. But if I close 20% into my foot in the door, 15,000, and I close 70% of them into, I just went from closing people at 10% to truly closing people at 14% into the $250,000 thing. So I just saw a 40% increase in revenue by introducing something on the front end, a roadmap, a blueprint, an audit, a calculator, whatever it might be, that they get used to paying you. You build trust. They have now transacted with you with money. You're now in their vendor system. It's a lot easier to move forward with you after that because you provided value at a lower cost. If I got this much value out of $5,000, how much am I going to get out of $50,000?
But dude, you literally just sold my course essentially. Like that's for
Hell
my
yeah.
program. That's exactly what we're talking about here in Rector
Hell
Revenue,
yeah.
man. Like that's because like people we're so caught up in contingency, and I know we're catching up on time here, so I don't want to
We're
take
good.
up too much of your time. But at the end of the day, like we're so caught up in this like funnel vision of contingency and retained that you've lost the perspective of the fact that it's not a transaction and it's a
Mm-hmm.
sale and it's a program that you provide. And if you can actually create really great programs and great products and create and exchange value or currency in a real solidified way, you now get paid up front for the
Yes.
work that you're doing anyway.
Yes.
You're already doing this work. So it's like the reason why people look at recruiting as a commodity is because they don't really see the back end of it, and we've transactionalized, if that's a word. We've made everything a transaction in recruiting, where it's
Mm.
like, oh, I've got a resume. Here you go, pay me. Oh, I've got this candidate, pay me. And so now no one understands like the back end service behind it. No one understands like why you actually were able to succeed in it.
Yes.
And it becomes a bounty hunter thing versus hey, like I can actually solve a problem for you, which is like your talent management strategy, or your the intake
Yes.
process, or you have a sourcing conversion issue. Like,
Mm,
there's so many things that so many recruiters are fantastic at, and if you are a 200 to $700,000 billing recruiter on a consistent basis, guess what? Like, you have a skill set that most recruiters don't have,
yes,
and you just haven't been able to productize it. You haven't been able to monetize
that's
it.
right.
And if you do it in a real way, you can actually have really great results at the end of the day. It's not saying walk away from contingency entertain.
No,
That
no, no.
you should always have that. It's just there's better ways to actually make better revenue streams for yourself without changing or without creating brand new products or creating a brand new like solution that's
What
going
I
to
would
charge you.
encourage everyone in this, whoever's watching or listening to this, to do is to, what do you offer? I want you
Yes.
to write down everything that you do with your offer. Everything, right? I build lists, I get data, I enrich data, I use this ATS, I do this, and this. And instead of saying we're a contingency recruiter, we're going to deliver talent, reframe and reposition the same exact offer to be more valuable. What I mean by that, so we sell a performance-based outbound offer, right? It's a cost per lead model, but what we call it is the and train. So when you work with us, not only do you get the lead, but you get the data team, you get the data itself paid for, you get sales engagement platform licenses, you get a sales development rep, you get a sales development manager, you get a VP of sales. All that shit I could have just not mentioned.
Yep.
And so what you say is like, hey, not only are we contingency, but you get this and this and this and this and this. Most people do it anyways. They just don't tell you about it. They
Exactly.
just talk about the final result as opposed to saying you get the final result, but you get this and this and this and this. You were going to lump it in there no matter what, but you've attributed no value to it to the client.
Yep.
And now they're like, oh, these guys are giving us not just the talent, but they're doing this and this and this and this, which you were doing no matter what. But now you've split it out as bonuses
Yep.
to your offer.
And it means something to them. You have to put it in terms that actually mean something to them. That's the flip, and that's what we work on, man. Like, this is awesome. Joey,
Yes,
you're the
sir.
man. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for being a friend to Recruiting with Dynamite. Thank you so much for spitting some knowledge on a perspective. I didn't even know you were a recruiter at Texas.
Yeah,
That's
brother.
hilarious. So you actually have some genuine, heartfelt pains that we've felt, and
I
it's
get it, man.
great to see it come out in the success you've had, man. Keep up the really great work. Keep staying bold. Don't let anybody like try and push you down. I know you don't really give a
Trust
shit,
me, I won't.
but at the end of the day, man, thank you again. I really appreciate you. If anybody wants to get a hold of Joey, or if you're a recruiting owner or agency owner that's doing multi millions and you're looking for a better sales process, hit up Joey, man. Like, honestly, reach out to him. Reach out to Apex Systems. He will set you up properly. So I appreciate you again, and thanks for everybody who joined. Join the live Dynamite events next week. We've got some really great people coming on over the next couple of weeks. Next week is going to take the perspective of how to make your recruiting business into something that you can actually sell. So build to sell. So we have one of the biggest investors and the person who's actually looking out for deals in recruiting, trying to give you some advice on how to make your recruiting business a lot more tangible and create real good revenue for yourself in the back end of this. So again, thanks again. Have a great day and good luck out there. Dude.